friends, this is Priyanka. Today we are going to study working of 4-stroke engine. This 4-stroke engine is also called as compression ignition engine. So why it is called as compression ignition? Due to the increased temperature and pressure due to compression process, the fuel is getting ignited. So this is called as compression ignition. Now in this type of the engine, the fuel used is the diesel. So this is also called as diesel engine. Now we know that what are the 4 basic processes that are responsible for the working of any engine. So first is the suction process, then there is the compression process, then there is the expansion process and the exhaust process. So these are the 4 processes. So how these 4 processes are carried out in this 4-stroke engine we will study. So now here the first is the suction stroke. So before that we will understand what is the structure for this 4-stroke engine. So here is the inlet valve, here is the exhaust valve and here is the injector. So instead of the spark plug, here the injector is provided and from the injector the fuel is getting injected. Now what is happening in the suction stroke? Piston moves from the top dead center to the bottom dead center. So this piston is getting attached to this crank through this rod. So what is the motion of this crank? So initially the crank is at this point, that is this is the point 1. So as the piston moves from top dead center to the bottom dead center, crank is getting rotated in this direction and here is the final position of the crank. So if we observe, there is the 1 stroke of the piston, then there is the half revolution of the crank. So in this suction stroke, inlet valve opens and exhaust valve remains closed. So what is happening? Because here the injector is provided, so what is entering in the cylinder when inlet valve opens? So here the air enters in the cylinder. So remember that here from the inlet valve in the suction stroke, air is entering into the cylinder. Now our next stroke is the compression stroke. So what is happening in the compression stroke? That is, piston moves from BDC, that is bottom dead center, to the top dead center. So from when this piston moves in the upward direction, so I will show here the direction, then this air is getting compressed. So what is the effect of the compression on air? Its a temperature is getting increased as well as its a pressure is getting increased. So at the end of compression process, the fuel is getting injected. So this fuel is getting injected in terms of fine droplets. So here is the question in the oral, that is why this fuel is injected in the fine droplets. So the answer is for the complete combustion of the fuel, and this fuel is burning due to the increased temperature of the air, and here both the valve remains closed. So here it is important to note that the fuel is getting injected at the end of compression in terms of fine droplets. So we have to show that here upward motion of piston. Now this piston is connected to the crank. So here is the initial position of the crank, that is point 1, and as piston moves to the upward side, here is the rotation of the crank and it reaches to here. So within this 1 stroke, the crank revolution is half, or crank is rotated through 180-degree angle. Now we will move to the next. So what is happening? So here the combustion process takes place, and due to combustion some gases are getting produced. So due to this produced gases, again there is the expansion process. So when there is the expansion process, our piston moves from this top dead center to the bottom dead center. So I will show here. So again what is happening? So here is the initial position of the crank, that is 1. So again as piston moves from top dead center to the bottom dead center, this crank is getting rotated through 180-degree and it reaches to the here. So what is happening in the expansion stroke? This is getting the, due to combustion, here is the expansion process takes place. Now next is the exhaust stroke. Now again piston is moving from this bottom dead center to the top dead center, that is in the upward direction. So this crank is getting attached to the piston. So here is the initial position. So as the piston moves in the upward direction, here is the crank rotation. So crank is getting rotated through 180 degree or half revolution of the crank. So in the exhaust stroke, this exhaust valve is getting open and burnt charges or whatever is the combustion products, just like gases or ash, is getting exhausted from this valve, that is exhaust valve. So these are the four basic processes are taking place in this 4-stroke engine. So we come to know that here there are total number of strokes are 4 and total number of revolution of the crank are 2. That means 4 stroke and 2 revolution of the cranks are taking place. Now we will move for the features of the 4-stroke engine. So what are the features? So here there are 4 stroke and 2 revolution of the crank. So it is heavy in weight. Then its size is large. Then here we can provide the air cooling system as well as water cooling system. And where it is applicable, so if we see the heavy vehicles such as trucks, buses, so this 4-stroke engine is working better in these heavy vehicles. So these are the applications for the 4-stroke engine.